It is podcasting time. I'm James Piecowye. He is
Glenn Power.
And this is the PowerWorks podcast, where for the next little bit, we're going to be talking about all things automotive. And our goal ultimately is to stop you from getting ripped off when you go to the garage. And that's, I think, in a nutshell. And
it's a noble quest.
It's a noble quest. We try.
Yeah.
We work hard on it. And we're going to talk a little bit about the part of your job that you hate the most, and all mechanics hate the most, is the copious amounts of bad news you have to give people. And that bad news always has a price tag attached to it. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But before we do that, I want to remind everyone, look, you're watching, like us, hit that subscribe button. If you're on 100.3, hey, it's great to have you around. Get in touch with the station. Send in your questions. They'll get them to us, and everyone will be happy. And look, we really appreciate all the support. So thank you for hanging out with us here on the podcast, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. Right off the bat, summer is coming. Winter, if you're in the southern hemisphere, but
yep.
Summer is coming for the majority of the audience to this program, and I do my typical litmus test on how prepared people are for the summer simply by looking at the number of cars that overheat on the side of the highway.
Started already.
I've seen a couple, and I got to say, so far there's always been people around. I'm going to actually put a case of water in the back of the Jeep just for the coming months. So if I see someone sitting there who needs something, I can stop. I can at least throw a couple liters of water at them and say, hey, look, you know what? Don't start up your car. Here's some water for you. If you want to use it in your car once it's cooled, hey, great. But better to be prepared. So I'm gonna do that actually today. But I've seen a couple, and that always tells me time to start thinking about summer, and people just don't do it. So I wanted to pick your brain just for a second on what are some of the top things people should be doing now before it's too late.
I think the most important one is to make sure that they've got, as you just mentioned, provisions for potential breakdowns. I mean, summer in the Northern Hemisphere to us is different to summer in the Northern Hemisphere to your home country or my home country. So here in Dubai, the summer is an extreme of heat, and we also get the humidity, which makes it very difficult once your air conditioning packs in. So if you're at the side of the road in a breakdown, you've obviously got no air conditioning. I mean, Dubai's got pretty much everything except for air-conditioned streets at the minute. So, you need to have you said the provisions. Water is a big one. Something, some kind of salty snacks, not something like that that'll keep you going at the side of the road. You don't want to be just flushing yourself out with water. So that's a genuine thing. But in terms of the car, you've got to make sure your tyres are right. Tyres is a big one. You mentioned overheating, which is also a big one, but the tyres is often overlooked.
Take a look at your tires and
yeah,
cracking, condition of them. This is so huge.
Yeah, it's the air pressure as well. The road temperature gets so hot, the friction from driving increases the temperature of the tyre as well. That the pressure can get far in excess of what the recommended pressure is. The cold pressure filling data on the vehicle is what you need to fill it at, as cold as you can. And
so when I put in 34, 35 pounds PSI, what kind of pressure does it go up to?
So you can get an increase of 5, even 10%, depending on how you're driving and where you're driving. So, and as soon as you get, the example you used of PSI, if your tire pressure is supposed to be, let's say 34, you just mentioned that, 34 PSI. If you then drop to 31 in the cooler months, that can happen. That tyre already becomes non-tested effectively. That means that tyre is out of any recognised spec. So you could stretch it and say it's unsafe. And the same applies in the opposite direction if your pressure goes too high. And blowouts are so common here. So common. And it's not the condition of the road, because the roads, I mean, I don't know any road really that's got potholes in, apart from where we live, where they've all been washed away from the storm the last week. But there's no potholes on the main roads. The roads are bowling green smooth most of the time. So it's heat and lack of tyre maintenance. And I get it, right? In June, July, who wants to be at the petrol station or wherever you're going to fill in the air in your tyre? But unfortunately, you just got to do it. It's just one of those jobs that you need to do if you own a car. And I think if you just get into the habit of it being your first job of the weekend in the morning, if that's the time to do it, then at least it's as cool as it's going to be. Most petrol stations where people fill their tyres are 24 hours, so you can go there and get the air pressure and check it. And even abusing the position that you're in the fact that a lot of the times the attendants at the petrol stations will do it for you while you sit in the car with the air conditioning on. But you've really got to make sure you check your tyres, because the tyre, if your car overheats or your AC stops working or one of your drive belts fails, for example, okay, you're going to have a situation where you're going to have to pull over quite quickly. If you lose a tyre because it's blown out, you're out of control, potentially, and potentially you're doing 100 kilometres an hour, and that's going to take you a long time to stop. And if it's taking you a long time to stop and you have no control of where you're going, who knows what's going to happen on 5-6 lanes of traffic. So the tyres are the big one.
So just quickly with the tires, we've talked about just filling them up with air. What about nitro? Is that going to be any better for me? You grimaced.
I just think unless you know that it's from a source that you know is pure, and you are using that vehicle on a racetrack, there's very little to recommend nitrogen for, other than if you know it's coming from a bottle of nitrogen that you know is as pure as it can be, it's not contaminated with anything. You know that you're able to vacuum your tire out to get everything out of it, so that you're only putting nitrogen back in, because there's no point putting nitrogen into a tire that's already got air in there,
because then it's corrupted and you're doing nothing.
Waste of time. And if you're going around a racetrack and you're talking about extreme tires, temperatures, and what nitrogen does is nitrogen maintains it's less affected by temperature. At the temperatures we experience on Earth, it's less affected by temperature than air is, effectively. So a nitrogen tyre at 2 bar and an air tyre at 2 bar, driven for, let's say, 100 kilometres an hour in the middle of the summer, the nitrogen tyre is going to maintain much closer to its 2 bar pressure than the air tyre would. The air tyre will increase in pressure quite high. There's also benefits to the fact that, air has moisture in it. Steel wheels don't like moisture, even alloy wheels don't like moisture. And people that have tyre pressure sensors, they're electronic, so nitrogen can help in the fact that you're guaranteeing, or almost guaranteeing, that you're not going to have any moisture in that tyre that can affect your electronic component. But as I say, that being said, if you're filling your car tyres with nitrogen, you need to make sure that they're under a vacuum before you fill them, because how are you going to fill just nitrogen when there's already air in them? So that's where the problem comes. And what you have to remember is that the nitrogen so we have nitrogen in the workshop, but we don't use it for tyres. We use it for testing air conditioning leaks. It's an inert gas. It's not volatile in any way, really. And to fill an AC system with nitrogen and let it leak out isn't going to harm the atmosphere. Filling an AC system with AC refrigerant and letting it leak out is harming the atmosphere. So using nitrogen for that is great. We buy it. It comes in obviously a compressed. We've all seen gas bottles blow up in James Bond films and stuff like that. It's just like one of those with a big valve on the top. And we know that it's as pure. I think it says 99.9% or something on the bottle.
Is it expensive?
On the tag. Not really. Not expensive at all, which is another one of those things. But when tyre shops charge you for nitrogen, it's because the machine that they use is expensive, more than the nitrogen itself. And also, it's a bit of a gimmick that they can sell, The fact that people charge for air, you pay like £1 a minute for air in the UK just to pump your tyres up.
Yeah, it's
ridiculous.
Free. It's free.
Air's free. But
I guess you're paying for the compressor.
Yeah. But the nitrogen, the ones that are filled properly, as I say, they pull a vacuum first. Make sure it's a vacuum inside the tyre so that there's no air left, and then it fills with nitrogen. If you can do that, then you will see benefits. Your tyre pressures will stay closer to what they should be in and out of use. However, it's not necessary if you're checking your tire pressures regularly. It's not something you should worry about spending money on.
We've talked about making sure your tread, making sure your tire is okay, cracks and all that kind of stuff. And we've talked about air versus nitrogen and just keeping the pressure consistent. What about making sure your tires are balanced? How often should I do that?
So the thing with tire balancing is that, you could go and balance your tires now and get them dynamically balanced. And basically all that's doing is it's spinning them around a known true rotational point and measuring where the tire is not rotating at an even speed. So where's a heavy spot, where's a light spot, and you're counteracting that by putting weights as appropriate opposite the heavy points to balance it, to make it rotate smoothly. Anyone that's had a tire out of balance will know that it shakes, and it can be quite, especially at higher speeds, if it's one of those sort of low frequency rumbles, it can, people can experience motion sickness and all sorts from it. It's not nice, and it's also adding wear to the tire that's not needed. So you reduce the life of your tire from that. You could balance the tires on your car now, drive it up the road. You drive to your campus in Abu Dhabi, and then all of a sudden drive back and check them on a balancer again. They'll probably be out of balance. They won't be perfect. Most tire balancing machines are going down to about 5 grams in error. So it's not difficult to pick up a stone and throw that out, or have to brake a little bit harshly and flatten a bit of the tire off, or spin the wheels at a set of lights, etc., etc. And also with wheel balancing on modern cars with alloy wheels that don't have a rim, they're stuck on. So again, with the heat of the summer, this adhesive fails and they fall off. So we get it quite often. We'll get a car in, we'll do a service on it, we'll road test it, say, we could do a balancing the wheels. We'll balance the wheels, we clean the wheel up, stick the new weights on, and then a week or two later the car comes back. I heard a bit of a noise and now my car's vibrating, and that's the weight falling off and flicking up inside the rim and inside the wheel arch, and it happens a lot. And then obviously you've also got the fact that people wash their car, they use pressure washers, especially on wheels. Everyone wants shiny wheels, right? They blow them through the spokes and it blasts. Because again, anyone that's lived here in the UAE in the summer knows that the water coming out of the mains tap on the cold side is the same temperature as the road. Because it's just being baked. So you're blasting it with hot water. So, if you get glue on your hands, what you're going to use to get it off? Soap and hot water, right? So that adhesive that sticks those weights on doesn't like it, and they come off quite often. So tire balancing is pretty much breakdown maintenance, as we call it, which means most people only do it when it's necessary because there's a vibration on the car. But it's one of those, a bit like wheel alignment. You could always adjust a wheel alignment, even if you've just done one. You do one drive in it, bring it back in, and it wouldn't be in the same spec as when you let it go. So always worth doing. We do it on most services that we get in.
Do you do them here in the shop, or do you just send them out?
It can be either way. So you use the mobile tires, right? The mobile tire people are pretty good.
Yeah,
a lot of them, they have the balancing machines on. That was sort of the big push forward for mobile tires when it became possible to get machines small enough yet heavy and stable enough to balance on a van. Because you have to remember, as I said, they're trying to balance the rotation of a tire around a known true center. But if it's in a van that has suspension, as it spins, especially if your wheels are quite big for a Jeep Wrangler, especially as they're spinning, they can shake the suspension of the van and they can throw the reading out. So once that got figured out by the manufacturers of these tools and made relatively inexpensive for people buying them, mobile tire things became quite popular now. And to get you out of a situation at the side of the road, especially if you've got a car like a BMW that's got run flat tires and you haven't got a spare, these mobile tire ones can do that for you. And if they're coming out to do your tire, just ask them to balance the rest. They'll be happy because it's more money for them, and you get it all done in one go.
I know, it's always like, it's another 50 dirhams. Yeah, it's like, all right.
Why not?
All right.
Yeah.
Well, what about rims? Do I need to be checking out my rims as well? Or is that they're pretty standard?
So one of the problems with alloy wheels is, especially on low profile So things like Range Rovers, right? You get 22-inch wheels with really thin. I mean, it's a Range Rover. It's supposed to be going through a field.
Yeah, no.
But it's got 22-inch rims and a really low-profile tyre on it. So the sidewall of the tyre is painted on, basically. And then it hits a speed bump in Arabian Ranches or whatever.
Finished.
And
bends the rim.
It bends the rim.
Yeah.
And it happens a lot. I use Range Rover as an example.
And if you've listened to our last podcast, we really like the Range Rovers.
Yeah.
I saw one yesterday again.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa.
Nailed it this time.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, it's mainly buckling when it comes to alloys, and then what can happen is they can
how does
crack.
that feel when you're driving?
It's a bit like having a wheel out of balance.
Okay.
It's just a little bit more severe usually. Sometimes they're quite easy to repair, but if they crack, what happens is it's hard to see the crack. And then it's very difficult to then weld effectively an alloy without making the crack worse.
Okay.
And sometimes you just do it to such a level that you can then never balance it properly. So,
So then you get new rims.
Yeah, which aren't cheap.
No.
They're not cheap at all. So, you've got, as an example of a Range Rover, we got a customer who borrowed his wife's. He bought his wife a Range Rover for a gift.
Wow, that's a lovely customer.
Lovely. Not good for us because it was a new one, so it's got warranty.
Okay.
But
he'll own it forever.
Then he used it because his car was quite low, so he used it during the floods the other week and couldn't see where he was going and curbed the wheels on it. So he got in touch. We sorted him repairing the wheels out, and they're diamond cut, so they were a little bit more expensive to repair, about $350 a rim. And then away he goes. He's happy. All done. Took a couple of hours on the machine. It's done on a lathe, which is pretty cool actually to watch. But the same instance with another vehicle on the same day, which had just a small buckle, it looked like, on the edge where they'd hit a curb. And there was a crack on the inside of the rim, which we couldn't see. So we'd repaired it. We put the tyre on. And while our QC tech was doing the quality control on it, the tyres just lost pressure in that time. And there was a crack in the rim. So then it's a matter of, okay, so what do we do now? And the new rim was 9,000 something dirhams.
Oh, no.
Obviously, we got a second-hand one. But they're not always available in the same design, right?
Yeah.
So then what do you do? And people that have painted rims, you paint your wheels, that sort of stuff. So if you then damage it, it's going to be hard to get a second-hand one. You're going to have to then get that and then paint it again. And so, yeah, rims are an issue. And people often hit the curb, and the first thing and only thing they check is the rim.
Right.
But the tyre's taking a massive hit.
Yeah.
And, the rim looks okay, so they don't really notice the big mark on the side of the tyre, which basically will then start to bulge out because what's happened is the steel sidewall has been bent. So it's then stretching and the air pressure inside finds a weak point and bulges out. So you lose pressure in the tyre, but you also get a big weak spot. And that can be quite difficult. But like I say, people hit the wheel and tyre on the side of the road, they only check the wheel rim because that's the pretty part.
Well, that's good. So we're getting a nice checklist together here. We've talked a little bit about keeping water, keeping some snacks. We've talked a little about tires.
Yeah.
I want to go back to air conditioning and cooling. Two very different things. So air conditioning in the car, because the air conditioning can affect the cooling, and just the cooling, making sure your cooling systems. Let's start with air conditioning. This is the time of year to get your AC inspected, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
are prices still low right now, or are they starting to creep up?
No, they've already.
Okay, you've already missed the window.
So we get our AC refrigerant from Borg & Beck, and we're relatively insulated from.
Big shout out to those guys, by the way. Borg & Beck, when we're talking about refrigerants, we're talking about brake pads, we're talking about air filters. Essentially those parts, the aftermarket parts that you're going to need for your car, and they don't do every part, but the parts they do, in some cases, exceed the specifications of the manufacturers.
Yeah, that's right.
Big shout out to those guys.
So we're sort of insulated from the seasonal price increase to an extent because we're buying from the source, whereas somebody that's reselling, they're just supply and demand, right? Free open market. So when the winter rolls around, we're going to be able to buy if we had to buy from the market, we'd be able to buy 15 kilo drum of refrigerant 134A. We would probably pay $199, $250.
Mm-hmm.
But you can 4 and 5 times that by the time the summer comes around. Even more. In fact, in the winter, you often get given it, but it just never gets used.
Yeah, here you go.
Never gets used. So it's one of those in the summer, you just can't get it enough. And, garages keep an AC service here is the same on 1st of January as it is on the 1st of June. It makes no difference on the season. So, and I'm sure that's the case. It's been the case at every garage I've worked at before I opened my own, and I'm sure it's the case at every other garage. So in the winter, it's reasonable business, but there's not much of it. And in the summer, we're not really making much on the service side of it, but hopefully, it keeps people's ACs working that they then understand it's worth doing regularly. So you get the repeat business out of it. And obviously, a lot of the time we're doing it and we're finding faults. But AC servicing is more important in respect of getting the oil out of the system and changing that. But most important of all, getting the moisture out of the system. There's a lot of humidity in the air. There's a lot of moisture in the air. And a compressor, which is what the AC system uses to convert states of gas, or one component of that, gas to a liquid. You have to keep it oiled, so it needs fresh oil, but you also have to keep it dry. It cannot compress the liquid. If you try and compress a liquid, it'll break. So any moisture that gets into the system from the outside air, which it will, it's on a car, so the engine is moving, the car is moving, so there's flexible rubber hoses. Those things have unions and connections and seals, and all those things are not perfect. So the bigger part of the AC service is pulling a vacuum on that system, getting all of the moisture out of the system, draining the oil out as best you can, putting new oil, new gas, and that done regularly will reduce faults on the AC system. It's not much they can do about electrical faults. You mentioned the cooling system as well. The cooling system and the AC system do go hand in hand. Things like the cooling fan in the engine bay, important for both systems. Obviously, if the engine's overheating, then what happens is the AC is going to stop working because there's so much heat coming off the radiator. The condenser for the AC can't do its job. The fans are dedicated to keeping the engine cool first and foremost, but you have to service the AC system. If you did it once a year, you would find less faults with the AC. In Europe, in the UK where we were, it was recommended to do every 2 years.
All right.
But it's not really a system was that necessary. And even when I was there, we still had cars that didn't have AC. Yeah. You still get some base model Polos and Foxes at the time that would come off the boat from the factory with no AC. And I think it's pretty standard now on any car. But servicing it in our hot, humid climate here would be much more beneficial to the owner of the vehicle if they did it every year. And possibly more than that, depending on how often they're having to drive the car.
And just get it looked at before it gets warm, because when it fails big, and then your car could be out of commission.
Yeah,
for
you can't
a few
drive.
days.
You just can't drive a car having had AC in it that then has no AC when it gets to the summer. You just can't. And people picking kids up from school and
we've all been there. It's horrible. You're stuck in traffic.
Yeah,
it's not moving. It's over 40.
Yeah,
you got all windows open.
Yeah.
You're going to a meeting, and you look disheveled.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. Everybody's been there, and it's not a nice situation. And servicing, it's easy. It sounds like it's easy for me to say, and of course, I'd say that if I'm charging money for doing it. But
I would have thought I would have thought the price climbs dramatically when it gets warm because of the price of the gas.
No, it's servicing is fixed, but preventative maintenance is a garage's primary responsibility. Repairs are a consequence.
Does everyone know this? Like, do all garages know that this is their primary responsibility?
You see, the problem is, right? So, if somebody brings a car in for a repair, it could be more lucrative in terms of a business point of view than it would have been had to have done the maintenance that would have maybe prevented that. So, for example, somebody brings their car in because the brakes are grinding. We're going to change the pads and the discs because the pads have worn to the point of scratching now the back plate of the pad onto the disc and damaging the disc beyond repair, beyond serviceable use. So, okay, we make some margin on the pads, and we also make margin on the discs, and we can charge a little bit more labour because it takes longer to change pads and discs than it does pads. Whereas the preventative maintenance on that is to have done the service regularly and then seen that the pads are about to wear out. The discs are okay, so better to change the pads now, and then you won't need to change your discs in 6 months' time if you forget. That's, from the garage point of view, not as lucrative. But what happens is the car might come for a service and we might give that report, and then it's, I'll leave it. Can wait, I'll remember. They're just trying to sell. Do you mean I've got 4,000 kilometres left on there? Why are you telling me? Because we try and give an estimate of how long left to go, right? It's no good us saying to somebody, and it's quite dangerous to say to somebody, you've got 30% of your brake pad left. Because they might think, well, I've done 40,000 kilometres on these, so, if I've got 30% left, I can do another 15,000, no problem. It doesn't work like that, because as the pad gets thinner, it gets hotter quicker and it wears quicker.
Right.
So there's an exponential growth in the wear rate of a brake pad from new to worn out. It wears quicker as you wear it.
Yeah.
But I understand it, and I'm not very good at it. I'm just a mechanic, so I'm not a salesman. So trying to then sit somebody down and nail them down to an estimate and say, look, you really need to do this, this, and this, I'm easily sort of almost shamed out of selling them that and saying, yeah, I get it. Okay, well, we'll see you. Come bring it in. And we often say to people, look, you're not going to make your next service with these brakes. If you don't change them and they touch the disc, you're going to need discs as well. And that's going to take an RS car, for example, an Audi RS model. You're talking 6,000-7,000 dirhams a disc.
Get out of here.
Right?
Really? That much?
Yeah. Or we can change your brake pads now, and Borgenbeck do them. So it's a quarter of the price of the agency original. So what do you want to do? But it's still a quarter of the original, still a lot.
I think anyone who's looking at a car needs to ask the questions, okay, what's it going to cost me for pads? What's it going to cost me for discs? What's it going to cost me for drums? All of these different things. What do the rims go for? What do the tires go for? Because you're rhyming off costs. We've talked about tire rims, and the costs are extraordinary. It makes me very happy that I drive old cars, and I've been driving them for so long that I know what they cost.
Yeah. There's a lot to be said for that. When we inspected an Audi S6 yesterday, and before the customer he's got an SQ5 as well, but before he brought it in for an inspection, we explained to him, look, check the chassis number, make sure there's been no accidents that the current owner has denied, and check the service history. Everything was clear, so okay, now bring it in. We don't want you to bring it in, right, pay us 300 for inspecting the car, and then for us to say, well, it inspects okay, but the service history is incomplete, don't buy it. We can do that before you waste your time and money. So went through that, did the inspection, everything was okay, and then we just talked about, what's it going to cost the service-wise? What's it going to cost when the brakes need doing? And like I said, he had an SQ5, comparably very similar cost-wise. So he was happy and went ahead with it. But, I was in a car showroom yesterday in DIP, near our DIP garage, the car buying people. And I was in there.
There's a lot of competition now. There's, sellingcar.com, the car buying people, auto swap, and there's like something like 6 of them.
So many people. And I was in their showroom yesterday, and in their showroom, they had 2 cars that we were just looking at. And one was a Willys Jeep Wrangler, 2018. I think they wanted 100,000 dirhams for it. One was a 2022 Golf R. No, 23 Golf R. So the Golf R was 200 and whatever thousand. We just do what we need to do with them. Now, both of those cars are cars that my wife likes. So I just sent her the pictures of them and what have you. Now, one's half the price of the other one. Half the price. The Jeep is half the price to buy than the Golf R. The Golf R is a lot smaller than the Jeep, but it's obviously a Volkswagen and that's a Jeep. The Golf R is 1 year old, the Jeep's 6 years old. There's all these comparisons you can make. None of those matter to me. The only one that matters to me is that I know that if the Golf has a problem, it's going to be more expensive to fix than the Wrangler.
Yeah.
That's a fact. So if I was
your
to
wife
buy,
wants a Wrangler. Come on, let's just.
if I was going to, well, if
at the end
I
of
was,
the day.
she's always wanted one. That's why I told her I was looking at one. But
So just tell her to wait, 6 months.
but if I'd got to choose,
No, I'm
between,
serious. I'm thinking of two.
if I got to choose between the two, the cost of ownership comes into place. Now that might sound like such a boring square thing to think about, and it's only because I'm in the trade, right? And I'm sure it's the same. It'll be the same for builders on houses. It'll be the same for plumbers when it comes to gas central heating. It'll be the same for anybody in a trade. Well, that's going to go wrong and that's more expensive. But it's so important because the amount of cars, the ones that suffer the most from cost of ownership, causing unfair reliability concerns, shall we say, Jaguars, Range Rovers, Land Rovers, Mercedes and BMW. Those four that we mentioned there, and I can only speak to our pool of data, shall I say, from this garage, but typically the customers that buy them because they're not cars that they can buy in their home country because they're too expensive and the tax is too high. So they come here and they buy them. They come to a new country, new bank accounts, decent salary amounts, can get good credit, so they buy them on credit. Then the warranty drops off. They bring the Jaguar in because it needs a water pump. And while we've got the water pump out, we notice that there's a couple of plastic hoses that are going to fail. There's also 2 more at the back of the engine, which we know from experience will fail, so we're better off doing them now. Oh, and also you need a set of tyres and your brake pads are worn out and it's due a service.
How much does that cost?
And then all of a sudden you're at 12, 15K. Right?
I'd be crying. I couldn't do it.
So what happens? They do the water pump. They'll go somewhere and get some tyres when they think about it, and they might do the brake pads. Okay, 4,000 or 5,000 of the money spent.
Just go to Sandance and get some pearlies and be done with it.
What happens is the car gets driven, and then for the next 6 to 12 months, it has a coolant leak every week.
Yeah.
Every couple of weeks, I've got a coolant leak, got another coolant leak, got another coolant leak. Oh, these Jaguars are rubbish. No. A part failed, and most of the parts were made on the same day by the same people and the same material. So if one's failed, they all have the potential to very soon. We recommend changing them now. One job, one lot of labour. Okay, it's a bit of a hit now, but it's better than taking that car apart every single time. Mercedes, one of the other examples I gave, very expensive to buy parts for. It's a Mercedes. Yeah. Give it a break. They are expensive to buy parts for. You take the 63 AMG, coolant hoses on those, a lot of them you have to take the engine out.
Really?
So you take the engine out to do a coolant hose, or do you take the engine out and change all 20 at the time? Because you're going to be 2,000 or 3,000 dirhams to take the engine out and put it back in.
Yeah.
So that little coolant leak, okay, we need to spend 10,000 to do the rest of the hoses, plus the labour, maybe 15K all in. Oh, I can't do that. I just want that hose. Okay, that hose plus the labour, 5,000. Car goes out every day, 6 months, risk of another coolant leak. Oh, these Mercedes aren't very reliable. BMW's the same. Land Rover's the same. As I say, it's the cost of that repair and people trying to be, I guess, sensible.
Well, everyone wants to save. They want to
financially sensible.
And that's why your bills, when I get an invoice, and like my repair bills aren't over the top.
No, but
but I drive an old vehicle.
If you add them up.
Yeah, and I got to say, anecdotally, this time around, I got a few repair. Came in for one repair. 3 other things need to be done.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, we're probably looking about, it's going to cost me about 6,000 dirhams.
Yeah.
Now, is that 6,000 dirhams a year? If I'm only doing one lot of repairs a year, I'm kind of going, okay, that's cost of owning a vehicle.
Yeah.
But there's more that could be done because it comes with a list saying, okay, these are red flags. These ones, down the road, you're going to have to do it, which means next time. And I'm kind of going, I don't know this kind of money.
Yeah. But you see, the thing is,
I also don't have the money to buy a new car, so it's better to keep fixing things than...
Yeah, but you own that car. You don't owe money on it.
Right.
And you can...
That's when I look...
If the worst case had come, you just said, I've got a misfire, and then I said, look, James, I'm really sorry to say you've got a cracked head. You just said,
I just walk away.
Walk away from the car, right?
Yeah.
Because you can.
Yeah.
A lot of people, when they've got a car on credit, can't, but they can't afford the payment next month because they've got to fix it.
Yeah.
So they won't fix it fully and they'll make the payment and then they'll complain because the car's having the same fault. From a garage's point of view, misfire is a good one. I was still in the UK when VW Group recalled every single ignition coil pack. Every single one. So every vehicle that had an ignition coil, I think it's 13F8 was the code of the recall. You used to have to write a sticker and put it in the boot where the spare wheel was. But every single ignition coil was recalled and VW replaced them all for free. Because a car would come in with a misfire and you'd know it would be the coil. So you tell the customer, look, needs a coil. We recommend changing the coil. However, the others will fail. And to save you having to be without a car, to save you risking damaging your catalytic converters, to save you breaking down on the side of the road on the way to a meeting or whatever it may be, we advise changing all 4. So one's failed, but we advise the 3 others. And there was a lot of resistance to that because these things were, at the time, you could get to £100 each.
Yeah.
So eventually VW as a whole group came out, recalled them all. It was done. Everything got done. Now, it doesn't mean they still don't fail because they're electronic components. Everything breaks. We get it here. But if somebody comes in with their Land Rover that's got a V8 in it, that's got 8 ignition coils, and it's got a misfire on one, and it's 350 dirhams for an ignition coil, but the customer's got a shake from the engine, lack of power, and the engine light on. That's what the customer knows. The customer has an engine that shakes, no power, and an engine light on. Needs an ignition coil. We recommend all of them. However, this is the cost of one. This is all 8. Oh, no, I'm not spending 3,000 when I spend 300. Okay. Fit it on. 2-3 weeks later, the customer has a shaking engine,
yeah,
a lack of power, an engine light on. And their first thought would be, I just paid you money to fix this and it's now exactly the same. The symptoms are the same. The fault is not the same.
Yeah.
And that's why we tried to have the conversation to explain that we need to change the coil. You have 8 coils. We've changed 1. Now we're going to change another one. Are you sure you don't want to do 7?
Yeah. It's going to happen.
And that's
and you got to do all 7. Like you don't change one spark plug. You got to change them all.
Yeah.
That's hard.
But they're not cheap.
No.
So as I said, I'm not a salesman. I'm a mechanic. I'm still in a situation where I give myself a pat on the back when I pay school fees. You know, right? I'm not
I hear you.
I'm not going away on holidays and stuff like that. I'm just, so I get it when someone looks at me and genuinely says, no,
and that's the bad news. You've got to keep giving because someone's coming in. You know they've got to make school fees. They know they've got rent. They know they've got a mortgage on their vehicle. And at the end of the day, you got to tell them, hey, you know what? This is going to cost you 16,000 dirhams.
Yeah. And we suffer from it in terms of a awkward conversation with a customer who automatically thinks we haven't fixed the car properly when it has a repeat error.
All mechanics are trying to get as much money off people as you can.
Trying to overcharge them, or we didn't fix it right. Yeah. And it's all about having that conversation and making sure everyone's clear. But it's very easy to not understand what someone's talking about. If I came to Zayed University and sat in one of your lectures, I would have absolutely no idea what was going on. I think
you'd be okay.
No, but I wouldn't have a clue.
Yeah.
So then if you questioned me about it 3 days later, I wouldn't know. And it's no different. Our customers aren't educated in what we're trying to do.
They don't know the terminology. They don't know how the pieces fit together.
Even if we have that conversation, it's just over the top of the head.
Why is an ignition coil important anyway? What are you talking about?
Exactly.
What do you mean it's a coil?
We suffer from it, but the manufacturers of the vehicles suffer in the way that, these cars are no good in this environment. They're not reliable, you know.
Yeah.
And that's just not the case. It just isn't the case. They're just more expensive to maintain, and that's no different to anything that is scaled in price. You know, I can go and eat lunch today for 5 dirhams if I want.
Yeah. Or
I can spend 100 and have something delivered. There's a reason for the difference in price sometimes. It doesn't mean one's better than the other, but there's reasons for it. And that's the same as people saying, you know, an Audi Q7 is not as reliable as a Toyota Land Cruiser. Well, unfortunately, how are you measuring that? how do you measure that? Because an Audi Q7's got a heck of a lot more on it than a Land Cruiser has for a start to go wrong. So percentage of faults per system, what does that look like? Because I think it's probably pretty even. Now, could a Land Cruiser be 10 times more unreliable than an Audi Q7 because it's 10 times less expensive? That's a different conversation. But because of that, the Audi doesn't get repaired properly, and the Audi is the one that gets the bad reputation, whereas the Land Cruiser is, it never ever breaks, and it does break.
Yeah.
It does break, but it doesn't stop you driving it while it's broken, and people don't have 400 warning lights as soon as something drops on the dashboard.
Yeah. Yeah, so coming this morning to change the topic a little bit, and I do feel sorry for you that you've constantly got to deal with those conversations, because that's a half an hour each time.
Could be worse though. We could be the customer on the other end of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. At least we are getting paid for doing it. It's just
that's again, drive old cars, because then you know that you're going to have to get repairs.
Yeah,
you're already set up for it. You know, it's like it's coming.
Yeah,
it's coming. Driving this morning, saw a brand new Hyundai Accent.
Okay,
brand new. It's kind of weird shape. Kind of got Prius looks to it, but it's kind of rounded, like the last version of the Nissan Sunny. So I wondered if this Hyundai wasn't coming out of India, just because those Nissan Sunnies were really being made for the subcontinent, and I had to take a second look. It really did resemble a Sunny, which I thought huge compliment to Nissan, that Hyundai's looking at their design and saying, "Wow, you know what? It really works." So it was interesting to see it, but very Prius angled. So it's not that it looked like a Prius, but very angled backside, angled corners, like that first gen Prius had.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it now. I mean, the Accent's a car that's not really caught on as well here.
No,
like in the UK, it's pretty common.
Yeah, there's a lot of them because they're affordable.
Affordable. Yeah,
you're not going to love it. You're not going to hate it. It's going to get you to work and back, and you're gonna. It's when you take it into the garage to get repaired, it's not going to break the bank. So it's just a good little car.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it now. I mean, I prefer. Obviously, this is on the dealer's website, so it's the top spec one they're showing you. But I mean, it looks better than a Sunny. But I can see what you're saying.
You see, it's kind of that the angle from the hood on the roof as it goes down. It's kind of rounded. It's got that. To me, it first thing I said was, "Oh, that's a Sunny." Kind of.
Yeah.
With a new, I thought it was a Sunny with a new shape, and I thought, "Well, okay."
8-inch touch screen.
Yeah.
Navigation.
It was huge.
HD
the screen inside.
display.
Yeah. I'm looking inside, and as I'm going by in the Jeep, and I'm going, "Wow, that is not the Hyundai I remember from the past."
Yeah. No, it is strange how that hasn't caught on here. I mean, it's not even that you see many rental cars, do you?
No.
You don't really.
No. Yet, and Taxi Fleet uses a bunch of Hyundai products, so I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah. I remember a friend of mine having a bright yellow Accent, and he had it was a 1.5 litre engine in it, and that might be one of the reasons they don't do taxis here with them. But that will be quite bigger than, quite a lot bigger than that one was. 15 years ago.
Sad news in the newspaper yesterday that Subaru is finally finishing the legacy. No more.
I mean, it's not that sad. To be
sad
honest.
news.
It's not sad for whom?
For somebody.
For whom?
I know a lot of people who drive legacies, and I got to say, you've heard me talk about them. And like it does what it needs to do. It's
not sad for garages because they never break.
No, and it's got a great all-wheel and four-wheel drive system, and they can, Vermont is built on the Subaru Legacy in the U.S. I mean, I think every second Vermonter is driving a Legacy.
Yeah. So the Forester is the popular one in the UK.
Yeah.
The Impreza, obviously, but
and the Forester. And if they're not driving a Legacy or a Forester in Vermont, they're driving a Volvo. So, but yeah, they're getting rid of it. And I thought, wow, it's just time to move on. It just doesn't tick any of the boxes. It's just
the irony of removing a car from your lineup called the Legacy.
The Legacy. So I thought, well. Which led me into what before I was looking at that, there was the Volvo Museum, which I like, wow, there is an actual Volvo museum. You can take a virtual tour. Some pretty cool looking Volvos in there.
I seen you the one from the 70s with the reverse camera on.
Yes, you did. We've been sharing, you DJ and myself. We've been sharing a lot of different car things. I think my favorite one was the one recently. That was pretty cool. The original backup camera, and then I had the one with the old lady and the and the Polo.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen that one, you got to look it up. She's standing there trying to sell her Polo to two guys, and they come in there looking at her, and she's standing there, and they're going, "Yeah, it hasn't been really driven," and she shows her driving it.
Absolutely hammered it. Mark 3 Golf, weren't it? Yeah.
She's just destroying this machine. She's getting air.
Yeah.
They're testing
that was a tank of a car, that Golf. That's why the GTI was so bad. It was so heavy. So heavy. But yeah, I wonder why they've closed the Volvo Museum. Probably because they're about to...
I think they're going to reopen it.
Well, they're not, because what they're going to put in it, 'cause now they're only making electric cars. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
I was watching a video yesterday. It was... the guy's annoying, but I don't follow him. It just got suggested to me. And he owns a Porsche Taycan.
Okay.
The electric car. And he wanted to trade it in, and he was in negative equity on his payments, so about £20,000. He owed $64,000 on it, and the car was worth about $45,000 to trade in, but the dealer wouldn't take it back. Said they can't sell them; they've got too many in stock.
Wow!
And there's a new model coming anyway.
That's a sad day.
So he couldn't. He wanted to trade it in, and put the $20,000 on top of the finance for a 911.
Good, solid decision.
But they wouldn't take it back, and we made the point at the start of this whole EV, not at the start, but the point when they became that everyone sort of knew what they were 5-6 years ago. We made the point of they're almost like mobile phones.
Yeah,
like everyone's got to have the latest one, and they'll just be disposable. And I think that's proof of it. This thing was like 3 years old.
Yeah, no one wants
it. The dealer didn't want it back because they couldn't sell the existing ones of that model, and there was a new one coming out.
Yeah,
and that's a real problem for a move that was aimed at environmental consciousness rather than, oh, we can't keep making internal combustion engines, we've got to make electric cars.
Yeah.
No good to anyone when you're throwing them away after 3 years, effectively throwing them away. The guy's 20,000. Now, it's not my fault, and it's neither is anyone listening's fault that this guy took a loan
what was he thinking?
to buy a car, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's the fact for most of the people nowadays. And that car is now worthless to anybody apart from him.
Right.
And then by the time he's paid it off in 3 years' time, it's going to be worth zero value.
Yeah.
And then what do? Just bury the battery in a landfill somewhere.
Yeah. That is a conversation we'll have next time. On that note, Glenn, it's been an absolute pleasure as always to have this great conversation. We had a really good conversation today. This is fun.
It's good. And not too many mosquito bites.
No, apologies to anyone watching on video that it does look like I'm scratching the junk, but I think I got bit on my groin.
That's the problem, James.
I know. It's like people are thinking,
they're
what?
violent though this year, these mosquitoes.
Oh man, I think I got bit on the scalp when we were talking.
I got them on the face and all sorts the other day. Ridiculous.
When you're doing a podcast with insect repellent on,
you
don't know
what that is.
But hey, thank you everyone for listening. If you're listening on 100.3, you know how to get in touch. Use the SMS, use the WhatsApp, get in touch. If you're watching us on YouTube or Spotify or any of those streaming services, you know how to like us. Give us some comments, and we'd love to hear from you, and we do answer back. So thank you very much for taking the time and joining us, and we'll do it all again we'll do it all again really soon. I'm James Piecowye. He is
Glenn Power,
and this is the PowerWorks podcast.